So you're very welcome back. Um, Today, I'd like to talk to you about why the shot process matters more than the score. Um, That'll be an interesting one to a lot of people. I suppose in target shooting, in our competitions, we have 60 shots to make in a qualifier. So if you're only looking for scores, you're at a loss because it's all about execution of a process, as I mentioned before. Scores are simply the outcome of executing that process perfectly. The real skill in the shooting is the ability to repeat that consistent shot process over and over again. And I feel that's probably why this sport appeals to me and is quite easily aligned with how my head works anyway, my brain. And I'm going to explain to you why focusing on the score can actually damage the performance, and why I focus instead on executing that process with discipline and consistency. So um, most people would think that the goal is to shoot a high score. So, for example, 10.9 in rifle shooting is the bullseye, and most people would be of the mindset the guy is constantly trying to hit the 10.9, and that's incorrect. That wouldn't be true at all. Um, Most people beginning would be looking at the target after every shot, for example, um, and wondering why the shot was either a good one or why it wasn't a great one, why it was a high number, why it was a low number, but they're missing a big part of the whole shooting experience and process. Um, Personally, I think a little bit different than that. I am consistently looking at the process. I do see a circle in the rear side, a circle in the foresight, and a circle on the bullseye or the target around the bullseye, more to be precise. But I'm not working on trying to hit. I can't even see it. If you remember, the bullseye is half a millimeter in size, 10 meters away. So if you can't see it, well, what are you doing? Well, I've got what I call a shot process, and the process takes X amount of time. I'm not going to share that with you. Um, a process could look like putting the butt plate into the shoulder, grabbing the pistol grip, and looking through the sights and aligning it and waiting for all the concentric circles to line up, and then you pull the trigger. Um, my process would be a little bit more elongated than that and would have a bit more depth in it, but those are top layer elements that actually feed into what I do as well. Um, I'm looking at preparation, for example, how I'm sitting in my wheelchair. It's got to be balanced. It's got to be a comfortable place because I've got to sit there for 60 shots, which is over an hour. I'm looking at alignment. As I said, concentric circles. You're lining up a circle in the rear sight with a circle in the foresight around a circle on the target. I'm looking at breathing because breathing's a big part of this because when you breathe in, if you have your head down on the cheek piece and you're looking out those sights, when you breathe in and out, you'll see the target rise and fall. So controlling the breathing is a big part. And then the trigger. Even pulling the trigger can actually move the sights left or right at the last second and drive you from a quality 10 shot out into the eighth. So the process that needs to be the same every time, over and over again, whatever your process is, alignment, breathing, and trigger control, they're fundamentals of it. And the better you execute those steps through your process, the better the outcome. And it needs to be the same over and over and over and over again. It's consistency of the process is what's actually going to reward you here. Um, I don't think I've ever tried to shoot a 10 because I couldn't even tell you where a 10 is. All I do know is there's a circle in the rear sight, a circle in the foresight, and there's a circle around the bullseye. And all I'm trying to do is align that. And all I'm trying to do. When you can see your heartbeat moving the sight, it's a lot. It's a lot of control mentally and physically, and I've mentioned that before, and it'll be a consistent theme throughout. Is this sport is full mind and body control for 60 shots, which takes an hour and 15 minutes for our qualifiers. Um, I'm looking to execute each shot correctly. And then, if you want, the score becomes the outcome of that process execution. So I'm not looking at the outcome. I'm looking at the process. So the scores. This is an interesting one. It's one that I actually learned early on with my coach. Um, we look at groupings. We don't look at shots individually. A good shot, a bad shot. What does that really mean? If I'm aligning perfectly every time, my shots should be closely grouped together. That's what we call a grouping. So you put in 5 shots, we'll say, and the grouping should be as tight as possible. So those 5 shots should be right beside or on top of each other. If you see a stray, which would be one separated out, that would be what we'd call a flyer. That's not what we're looking for. And why that's important, early on I was getting tens as flyers when my grouping was at a 9. And the positivity in that is I'm looking at the grouping now, not that shot, because getting a 10, it might excite some, but if it's not attached to the other grouping, the other elements of the grouping, it's not a good shot for me and I need to focus. So you can be misled by the outcome of your process. You can end up with a 10.9 and think that's wonderful when actually every other shot is in the 9s in a lovely little ring all around the 9s. And when you can get the grouping tighter, you move that grouping into the 10 zone, and that's when you start getting your numbers adding up. A lot of environmental factors there will happen. There could be noise, there could be someone shutting a door, that's enough. Could be light coming in from somewhere, could be a whole lot of factors. Um, and small errors, we're talking about small margins here, like you're talking about 0.5 millimeter is the bullseye, and it's got 10 concentric circles inside of that. That's anything could happen there. It could be if a sneeze, you'd need to stop anyway. It wouldn't be a good idea. It could be a tremor. Could see your heart in there. Could be a distraction that breaks you from your process. You'll hear someone talking. You shouldn't, but you could. It could be, I don't know, someone beside you at another shooting position, and they could be having a bad day, talking out loud to themselves. They could be adjusting different elements of the rifle. Um, you could see their screen and be affected by what they're shooting as well. So that's not a good way to go. And we spend as much time as possible trying to focus on our own process. Um, Scores only show the result one at a time, but the process is what's going to reveal quality of all the shots. One good shot out of 60 doesn't get you anywhere close to being at the top of the table at the end of the day. It needs to be 60 quality shots based on 60 quality process executions. So the problem with chasing the score, well, what's a good score and what's a bad score? A 10.5 could be a misleading score if the rest of them are all 9s, when actually you should take consolation from the fact that you have a really good process giving you all 9s in a really tight grouping. And then you can move that 9 grouping into the 10s. Whereas trying to get that 10, it's not a good place to go. Also, you'll actually get emotion attached if you're not careful to a shot. So you've got people who get excited with 10.5s and 10.6s, or disappointed with 8.9s and 9.9s, 9.7 and 6 and so on. The whole focus here is detach yourself from the number. The number is the outcome, but the process is what gave you the outcome. And that's actually what happens then is you start trying to make changes while you're shooting. Not a good thing to do. You execute the process. I've a mindset of you set the outcome, you lock the process to deliver the outcome. You control the variables as much as possible around that process. You review the data based on the outcome. You rework, refine, reuse, and restart the process again. The better I do that, the more I'm able to make sure my shots are consistently in a lovely tight grouping. I've been happier with groupings in the 9s than I have been with strayers in the 10s. That's for sure. Consistency breaks down over time if you're following shots. It doesn't if you're following a process. And it can get into your head. Main thing in this sport is not to let it get into your head. When your mind starts to focus on the scores instead of the process, it becomes quite unstable. And then another shot going in could go off to a different position, and then you're really messed up. So my focus always is get into my process, stay in my process, execute the process, analyze the outcome of the process, and restart the process. That's literally all I do. Anyone that's been around me would testify to that. An example I would have is where um, in Wales, for example, the jury member had to tip me on the shoulder and tell me I was going on to shot 61. I wasn't conscious of the fact I don't count, and I wasn't conscious of the fact that I was on. We do 60 shots for a qualifier, but I was so far into the process, I didn't even acknowledge that I was on a 60th shot. So, yeah, that for me was actually, I took pride in the fact that I stayed tight in my process there, because there's loads of distractions. Um, and I think you need to build a process mindset if you don't already have one. The goal, it becomes executing the shot process correctly. So that's where I get the most satisfaction. It's from executing that. The better, if there were medals, I would love to get a medal for executing the process over a medal for the outcome, to be honest. Um, because the process is where all the good work is done. By that, I mean, if you're shooting consistent high 10-point decimals, it takes a hell of a lot of work to do that, and it can only be done from a process, can't be done from emotion. You could get some in there, but you're never going to be consistent enough. Every shot becomes an opportunity to repeat that. So, shot one, it gives you a data number. The process gave you a data number. It tells you how well you were executing your process. If you take shot two and it's still in the same place, and even if it's a low number, that just tells you your process is executing really well, and you adjust your sights based on that. But if you're going to start adjusting your sights based on every shot, because it wasn't a 10.9 or a 10.8, you're chasing, yeah, you're going to go into a hole so quick. Then the emotion kicks in. Um, and early on, I would have had misleading numbers. I remember maybe getting two or three good quality tens, and then them dropping off to nines somewhere else. And it was actually the nines were better in their quality and in their grouping than the tens were. So nothing as bad as making a change and getting a good answer or a good outcome from it, only to realize that actually your process was broken and making that adjustment didn't give you the outcome. It was just a lucky shot. Um, the more I train, the more I develop. So I focus here. Every shot in training for me is the same as if I'm in a competition. I don't just go to a range and fire 60 shots in and come home happy. I might only go and fire 10. And there've been days where I haven't gone and fired any live ones. I've done dry firing, and that's purely because I wanted to sit in front of the 10 meters in an environment, execute a plan I had, and come home happy after it. So I didn't even shoot live rounds that day, but it was execution of the process. That's where I get most of the happiness from. And yeah, every time you analyze the process, it'll either confirm or it'll confirm it was the outcome was a good outcome. The process delivered that good outcome, or it always delivers a good outcome for me. It's just the outcome mightn't be the number that you would love it to be, and you just adjust it so that the process is delivering that outcome. That's the beauty of the sport as well. Um, Over time, the process becomes a little bit more automatic, but it should never become totally automatic because it can deviate. The body relaxes over a period of time. Your muscles loosen up. You move off of what we call NPA, natural point of aim. And we'll talk about that at some stage. We did early on, but we'll talk about that again. Um, if you're not watching the process and how it executes and analyzing it, you can drift off. And in the competition, drifting off is not something you want, because at the SH2 Paralympic levels that I'd be looking to compete, anything less than a 10.5 for 60 shots is going to be punished with a go home. That's literally it. There is no room for turning off. So execute the process, always stay with the process, stay with the outcome, analyze the outcome, refine, rework, and restart the process again. That's literally what has to be done. How does it apply to the training? Well, every shot I do in training starts with a plan. So I plan to do something based on the outcome generally. So a training session, first training session, then it'd be, what do I want to do? That could be stabilizing stability. I put together the steps I need to do to execute to create that stability, and I would analyze how well those steps were carried out. and that will follow into the next training session. Every shot I take is executed with the same mindset that I execute them with in competition. Each session's about improving an element of that process. So I would never go into trying to execute every process element and improve them all in one go. It could be around sight alignment, for example, and that would be the focus of a training session, but it feeds into a bigger picture I have. Um, I look at the result of my process, which turns into a number, but I'm not worried about that number. I'm worried about the process. Not really worried about it either because I'm far too focused on delivering the process and executing it. And the long term aim is to actually build this consistent process. And the more I work with the mindset and deliver that process, the better the outcomes are and more in line with the expectations of improvement. Um, I suppose that's what I hold myself to, the standard. It was that I reward myself afterwards with how well I executed the processes. Um, Precision shooting's definitely built on a repeatable process, that's for sure. And the scores are outcomes, but I will call them a byproduct. The score is a byproduct of my process execution, and that's literally it. The real work happens in the training, going along to a competition. Yeah, it's fantastic, but I'm literally only executing my process in a competition as well, but I'm not going to a competition to get serious. I'm serious about my training also and the quality of the training I do. I'm looking to master the fundamentals, creating this long-term repeatable performance so that I can compete at the highest level regularly. Um, I'm thinking that maybe what I would do is for the next video that I would cover learning a precision sport from scratch. That could be beneficial. I'd like to thank you for stopping by. Thank you. Have.